Greetings, welcome, peace and blessings, joy and prosperity, elevation, revelations, manifestation. Welcome to another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes, here on YouTube Live. All is truly indeed a blessing if you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is indeed my personal and constant prayer, mantra, affirmation, reverberation, and it is my ever living reality. It is crucial to all that I think, believe, see, understand, moving forward through any challenge, moving forward to any destination, but most certainly in this most important, most powerful moment in time space, which is right now. For indeed, the past is just a memory, the future is just a dream. It is only the present that we can command, that we can take charge, that we can operate in our power. And it is for this reason that I say all is truly and indeed a blessing. I welcome each and every one of you who are present now with me. Greetings, Kiona. Thank you so much for assisting me in my live chat. You got clarity. There's no buffering, and that's because I'm using my phone. Again, I'm using my phone, so I'm a little limited in terms of how you all are used to me being able to sort of command questions in the chat box, and I'm going to really be counting on the assistance of Kiona to help me to see and extract the questions from the general peace and love that we often like to share in the chat. So I do have you up as I did on yesterday in my on my desktop, so I can see you a little bit clearer. But Kiona, if you will, please continue to insert that question mark for me so that I'm able to see and distinguish the questions in a timely manner. Forever, how long Spirit would have us to be present. And in most cases, I have a subject matter, I have a theme, I have some particular platform in which I'm moving from. But then there are those times when Spirit has its way. And of course, with all the dynamics of what's going on in the world, around the world, we discussed this briefly yesterday, a rare opportunity where the globe is sort of unified behind one thing. And it doesn't mean that we're all going to look at it the same way, address it the same way, handle it the same way, process it the same way. But in terms of history, timing, a shared moment. Any world religion, any meditative circle would love to have something that would motivate global energetic unity to the degree that this particular pandemic has created in our present moment in time space. We can look back over time, the Black Plague and yellow fever and cholera and smallpox and see many other epidemics of biological nature come and go throughout the history of humanity. Uh, but this is probably the, save for maybe HIV from the 80s to some degree, which still didn't grip everyone um, in such a quick manner to the degree that this particular pandemic has. So we see people having an opinion. We see people sharing their faith, their belief, their understanding, if you will, about the condition itself, but also about how they plan to address it. And so for spiritualists, it gives us a very unique opportunity to address things like fear, as beloved just typed in the chat. Takia Jet, an opportunity to examine fear first from our own personal perspective. how do you handle fear? Uh, do you go within? Do you become a little bit more talkative? Do you tend to do some research? Do you gather opinions from those within your peer group or your peer circle? How do you handle fear? Do you prepare? And what exactly do you prepare for? And as a spiritualist, that's my domain. It's spirit. How we are handling this from a spiritual, mental, emotional perspective, and then how we utilize our applied power, our applied spiritual power, to use any opportunity as a chance for growth, for evolution, for change, for creating something new, something innovating, some new way of addressing any particular person, place, or thing out of the dynamics of everyday life. And so this is as real as everyday life can get. Even in my small circle here on the ground in New Orleans, there are some who are well prepared, maybe a little bit over prepared. There are others that are just completely oblivious. They claim to not watch the news. They claim to not be in touch with what's being said or discussed in social media. So therefore, their information is coming through a limited cipher, a limited vacuum, if you will. And when asked how do you plan to deal with this, how do you plan to approach with this, I'm getting answers like faith. And so I need you to help me to work that out. How do we work out biological agents with just faith? Faith is indeed critical to how we live each and every day. We talked yesterday about having faith in that the chair is going to hold you up every time you sit down in it, never predicting the time that one leg is going to give away, or the floor might give away, or the earthquake might happen to intersect with your opportunity to sit. But when we look at these sort of almost fictional like horrific events in time and space that show up in our society, it really gives people's imagination, but also their creative eye, an opportunity to see beyond what's immediate, what's in front of you. I pray some of you researched, looked up, searched for Octavia Butler's Parable of a Sower yesterday after I mentioned that again on the show, so that you can sort of connect that dynamic to what we're talking about today, and how we will continue to move the conversation forward into the future for what is positive, for what is useful, for what is beneficial. I'm already seeing a rise in request within my own client base about self-employment, personal pursuits, independent pursuits. How now do I move my personal agenda forward, my personal spiritual walk forward, my individual initiation forward, and how do I operate and act within that? We had one of our faithful viewers and participants yesterday ask, how do our initiates and our godchildren and our students who are already involved in a spirit journey, how now do they sort of fine tune what they're doing and how they're operating to sort of adjust to not only greetings Aboru Aboye Aboshishe Ashe, not only how we apply that to ourselves, but to people around us, family, friends. It's getting real personal. We're having to have this conversation now with our family members, with our neighbors, maybe with your landlord or your employer, who you are coming in contact with, and to what degree and under what circumstances. For some, it's still just what's being said on television. For some, it's still just what they didn't heard is being discussed in social media. But it's indeed real. It's our reality right now in this moment in time space. And I want to continue to be a tool. I want to continue to be used for the benefit of moving things forward, for the benefit of healing, for the benefit of empowerment for those of us who are accustomed to what we share in this space, but also for the new participants that might be coming in to the space and might be experiencing revolutionary hoodoo, New Orleans voodoo secrets and recipes for the first time. I always have said, as I was taught by my elders to say, that we stand on mighty shoulders of our ancestors, mighty ancestors who have survived plagues and pandemics and wars and upheavals in society of all types. So much so that we are here and present now today. We stand today as a success story to what was done before to get us to this present moment in time space. So indeed, we will prevail in this moment and will move forward. And another generation will speak of how those who came before them laid a foundation for which they could grasp hold to some skills, some tools, some information. Yes, indeed, Takia Jet, all is a blessing. All is a blessing. Yes, all is a blessing. My PayPal is paypal.com, paypal.me/ the Divine Prince. You can also find it in a link as an attachment to any email exchange that I might have. So if you send me a email question, comment, or request, it'll be automatically attached to the email. And I certainly appreciate you and anyone under the sound of my voice, your assistance, your donations. That's not why I'm here, but I certainly appreciate it. I too have to have toilet paper. I too have to eat. I too have to continue to live and move things forward. But yes, I appreciate the question. Kiona usually types it in for me, so she may not have just gotten around to it yet. But it is paypal.me/ the Divine Prince. And I most certainly do appreciate your questions, your comments. And please, if you're in my chat, type your questions, comments, requests in all capital letters so that I can see them and Kiona can see them and clearly distinguish them from the general conversation. And we can continue to sort of move forward. Many people are under great stress when events of this sort happen. And so there are those in our community who normally seek to avoid the news, seek to avoid the media, particularly this type of information coming through the media, but might take a heightened perspective of that now. But as with any weather condition or calamity or political condition or calamity, any sort of alert that might come through the system in our society, and now it's coming through not just our local society, but our global society, we want to at least be aware of what's going on outside of our door. That too shouldn't be behind the me. That's Kiona, that's not right. It's paypal.me/ the Divine Prince. That that last post you just put in, that's not right. Yeah, that's not right. So and I don't know how to remove it or correct it, Kiona. But that link that you just put in the chat, that's not right. Um, Yeah, it seems to work. Um, I'm not exactly sure why. So it's a valid link, but in terms of typing it in, there shouldn't be any numbers in there. It should be paypal.me/ the Divine Prince. But I did click the link. It works for me. So it should work for anyone else who might click it. But the idea now that we, are going to have to change our routine, change our interactions, at the local level, at the communal level, how we shop, how we entertain ourselves, how we communicate, the activities that we provide for our children and the young people in our community, the activities that we're now going to provide for ourselves. Um, Here in New Orleans, we have a large body of our population that are involved in the entertainment industry, which is in all effect at a halt right now, that are also active in the tourism industry. So the numbers of people coming to see our St. Louis Cemetery, number one and number two, Lafayette Cemetery, Jackson Square, the river, even the institutions that are quite popular but we don't think about every day, like our museums, the zoos, our restaurants, and our coffee houses, and all these businesses are going to be affected um, here locally at the communal level, but also nationally and internationally. We're seeing this being disrupted. I like to not only look at how things are affecting me personally, or New Orleans personally, or Treme personally, but I also am in the international community, as many of you know, every single day. So I also want to know how it's affecting Nigeria, Ghana, Paris, London, Brazil, Panama. So I'm reaching out through Skype. I'm reaching out through WhatsApp. I'm reaching out through Badu to people, friends, family, clients in other locations, to offer support, to offer love, to offer conversation, to offer entertainment as we are in this sort of halt pattern, this frozen standstill until we sort of get some kind of grip on what's happening. This is time to read those books, to write those books, and to create those poems and those spoken word productions that will be coming in the next year or the next 2 years. I'm very hopeful of how this will have a sort of projective, powerful effect on creativity, the artisans worldwide, the spiritualists worldwide, and how this will sort of push our um, creative buttons and our creative fibers to a whole new arena of creation, a whole new era of revelation, as we sort of pass through the eye of this needle. I am, for the most part, extremely positive about things, particularly as I count days, particularly as I, am aware of where I was at any particular time in the last 30 days. That has only given me a greater sense of resolve, if you will, to be extra careful and extra cautious and take any extra uh, alert that might be presented, legitimate alert that might be presented uh, to a level of legitimacy that's most appropriate for me and my peer group and those that surround me in my community. When I step out and I look out into the street, there's not a whole lot of activity. There is some regular activity, but not a whole lot of activity. I'm not seeing groups of people, not very many uh, pairs of people or triplets of people in on the street. The cars that pass my door are often singularly occupied. So I would hope that people are, taking the alerts and the warnings and the instructions, of your government officials and the CDC seriously, but are also utilizing, Supreme Divinity is melanated hoodoo occultist. Okay, I see you. And thank you so much for being present. This is the time for us to re-examine every aspect of who we are and what we are and what we're demonstrating. So when I hear, going back to where I started, when I hear words like faith, particularly now as we address biological agents, bacterial agents, I can't come up with a better word for it than that. I don't want to keep saying the virus. I don't want to keep saying COVID-19. It's a bacterial agent that we all have to now be aware of, conscious of. We see our celebrities and our journalists repeating themselves about not touching their face. I watched a video a little while ago about from Trevor Noah, South Africa, and he brushed his face and he said it out loud. I need to stop doing that. I'm seeing in some of our social media groups a certain degree of pressure from the community on itself about our own behaviors. Some people are a little worked up about those of you who chose to go out and celebrate St. Patrick's Day in groups of any number, and then are celebrating it in your various social media site. And I don't want to call out any one particular because I believe I've been banned in one social media group in particular, not because I had a comment, but because I had an opinion. And what I mean by that is I clicked like or thumbs up on something, and this particular social media group has the dynamic to block or censor usage to the site based on that. I even believe it's a loophole that I've now discovered in this particular site. So I will say it's not Twitter, it's not Facebook, it's a slightly newer site. Um, your, I'll tell you this: your zip code is required to get into it, and so I believe now I'm being censored from certain post within this site uh, because I clicked like or I clicked thumbs up, or maybe I ignored a post and didn't mention or give a comment about it at all. And moderators within this site might see that as some sort of influence. I am seeing other more business oriented sites that are taking much more serious their protocols as they relate to even the mentioning of remedies, health aids, how to fix or repair or change something that might have, the code words attached to it. So even the YouTube videos now are being thoroughly investigated for anything that might be questionable in this heightened sense of alarm that people have. And so you have your gym bakers and your product salesmen and pushers who are, being held to task right now for specific remedies or specific comments they make as it relate to this bacterial invasion that we are. I hope that wasn't broadcast. I do have a new phone, so I'm not sure that some of my notifications are not being heard by the general public, but my notifications are very personalized. But yeah, Tony, I'm gonna have to get back to you, beloved. So yeah, Kiona, I'm just now reading your most recent comment. It does seem almost created And when we look at it from the perspective of entertainment, for instance, um, now the only thing that's different about this new setup with me using my mobile, it leaves my computer wide open for me to try and pull things up and investigate. And I just pray that doesn't become a distraction with me leaning in and trying to pull up things that I'm talking about. Because I hate to mention things, particularly now in this environment, that aren't clear, that aren't specific, that can't be researched and clarified by those of you who are hearing me say things and make statements, particularly in this more critical environment where people are heightened in their sensitivity about what's being said, what's being posted, and then how it might create triggers for other people. I posted a book by Dean Koontz, Koontz. Dean Koontz. The book is called The Eyes of Darkness. The Eyes of Darkness. And in this book, the author predicts in just astonishing accuracy locations, names, titles as it relates to this pandemic. I've been told and have seen in some posts that it's also showed up in a movie that aired in a similar timing. This book, I believe, was printed in 1981. So it's real easy for people, beloved, to begin to get the idea, Kiona, that this, is created or manufactured or manipulated or many various ideas. I'm also taking into account that when events like this happen, like a 9/11, like this, laws are then changed. Laws are then created and recreated under the guise of protection, under the guise of not creating panic, under the guise of gaining greater accessibility to things that are helpful, that are needed, that might be supported during whatever the particular event is. So I'm also aware of, again, censorship and now just a certain tagging of certain words, certain usage of certain words can get your video silenced or pulled, or get your post silenced or pulled, or get your group silenced or pulled in this particular time. So as an artist, as a journalist, as a creator, it's a highly volatile energetically to operate in right now, which is why I say it's a very powerful, positive time for creation, recreating, finding new ways of saying things, of demonstrating things, of representing things, of bringing messages forward that don't create certain triggers, while at the same time watching sort of the machine work and watch the machine move. In some cases to our benefit, and in some cases not so much. There will be casualties, if you will, as there always are in any revolution, in any epidemic, in any pandemic, in any war, in any challenge. This war just happens to be one at the biological level, at the bacterial level, and as a spiritualist, and I'm sure there are those vegans, vegetarians, holistic, even health practitioners that support a positive frame of mind, a positive state of emotion is one more extra layer of protection in terms of our immune systems. But we can't just lead with that. That would be the equivalent to just leading with faith. So I got my Lysol and my Clorox and my bleach and I am limiting traffic to the house for sure. Thank you, Kiona. Thank you about the notifications as well, because I get some very specific notifications, and some of them should not be heard in the middle of the broadcast. But thank you, Kiona, for checking that out for me. But listen, as I said yesterday, I'm only going to broadcast for shorter periods of time. I might come back and broadcast maybe twice a day or three times a day when it's necessary or when I feel I have something to say. I'm here to address your questions, your comments, of course, your request for sure. I'm willing to do and address that during this time. Um, and I want us to be present. I want us to be present more so now than ever before. I want you to see my face. I want to be able to see your face. I want you to hear my voice. I want to hear your voice. I want to know that people are well. Um, because of sort of the shift in the economy, I'm not doing Blog Talk Radio right now. Can't afford it. Can't afford it. And unless someone donates the money for it, pays for it, I won't be doing Blog Talk Radio. I won't be doing anything that I'm going to have to pay for it. I don't have income for it. So we all have to make adjustments. We all are going to have to make some budgetary changes in how we operate for ourselves in our businesses and certainly in our ministries and in the places where our community comes together. Um, I'm even thinking about Congo Square. I'm probably one of the closest people, if not the closest person to Congo Square. And it is a place that I can still go and visit and connect with, the ancestors, our ancestors collectively. But I'm very cautious about walking up on people and having people walk up on me. So don't be offended. If I hold my hands up or if I stand back from you, I'm often going to be hooded and covered if I'm out at all. So don't be offended by my Jedi coat. The Jedi coat has magic, has voodoo in it. I know some of my performing friends and castmates um, have been questioning this coat since Halloween. Okay, but listen. This began in China in November, early November. Miss Gloria from Miss Gloria's Garden gifted me that coat Halloween night. Halloween night. Now for me, that spirit, you never know what piece is moved out of position or moved into position in your favor when any kind of challenge is befalls you, is presented before you. Now I'm not saying plan to be late. Absolutely plan ahead, plan to be early. But sometimes you're going to miss that turn. You're going to miss that bus. You're going to miss that plane. You're going to miss that train. You're going to miss that crossroad, that intersection, and it's going to be to your benefit. You just might not see it right now. So some of us are losing right now. Losing, it's a risky word. Any action words with ing behind it that we project out of our mouth. So we're going to say, are in transition. Might be in a hold pattern right now. Might be in a freeze. We might want to begin to now change our language and how we even speak about the present, the future, moving forward. Listen, I know some of y'all see me touching my face, but I'm alone right now. Me and the ancestors and the spirit and my defense. Okay, because if I got defense, I'm not prepared to be alone without defense. And many of you, it's America, the right to bear arms. This is that timing. But my hands are clean. My house is clean. Ain't nobody been through my door in a number of days. So I'm okay. touching my own face in here. But I'm not going out and about. But this is a creative time. We're in the mist, mist, the mist. We're in the realm of dark matter right now. This can't necessarily be measured. This can't necessarily be seen. This can't necessarily be perceived, if you will, as is anything that exists in the spirit realm. So faith is important now in terms of being hopeful, being positive, having a faith, having a belief, having an understanding. But those who might be existing in the gap right now of understanding might feel challenged right now. Um, where then do you lean? Where then do you fall? And if you've created a sacred space, a peer group, a social dynamic that requires physicality, you have to adjust that now. Even in my own community, my neighbors like to sit out on the stoop. My neighbors like to meet at the park. My neighbors like certain locations within the community. And we can find certain people there physically all the time. But now we are adjusting that. Your favorite spot might be your stoop now. And you might have to pass, with a 10-foot radius, and wave or say peace and blessings or greetings, but we have to make some spiritual adjustments. The time that I spend in prayer, in meditation, with crystals, in ceremony, under normal circumstances, is not normal. It's not usual to most people in the Western world. And now, globally, we're having to adjust our contact, out in the world, unless you are fortunate to live on an island where this is not present. And now is the time to think about our island nations, our island countries, our island cultures, who can limit their exposure from the outside world, but they have to have products. Me and my mother discussed this earlier today. If you run out of certain products and you are of a certain age group or a certain dynamic, and you want to access delivery, there's a safe way to do that. You know, don't let anybody in your house. I wouldn't be uh, personally ordering things right now that I can't spray, that I can't fumigate, that can't be washed down. Uh, you know, we have to make some adjustments. And as a spiritualist, I plan to be present, as many of you know I am, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, present to help us to sort of handle and process the energy associated with this at an individual level and then, of course, at a communal level. I pray I'm not missing my questions. I can see my desktop a little bit better, but there's a delay in time. Um, and the questions in the chat on my device are really small and they sort of flash and come and go. So where are my glasses? Greetings, everyone. Peace and blessings to anyone I haven't acknowledged today directly. I welcome everyone, and I'm grateful that you've taken the time in the middle of your day, in the middle of your event, to be here with us at high noon, U.S. Central Standard Time for Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes here on Blog Talk Radio. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Yes, melanated hoodoo occultist. Yes, I like the ring of that. I pray you've done the geometry, you've done the numerology, you've done the tonal notes, all the work that I look at when I'm considering words, names, and word usage. When I learned how important words were, names were, I was probably still a teenager. And so the idea of using different words, different names to reference any person, place, or thing changes its vibratory rate and then how it shows up ultimately in the real world. Keone, I'm just not seeing your Blog Talk Radio. I can't afford it. Until I get revenues, until the community gets behind me, them wanting me to do the Blog Talk Radio, which then shows up in my PayPal, I just can't do it right now under the present. Is there a difference between Voodoo and Hoodoo? Original entertainment. That's a great question. It's one that I answer at least 40 times a year. And I'm always happy to answer it because for some reason it still maintains some level of gravity at the communal level. Based on your question, based on your spelling, English and French, the difference between VODUN and VOODOO or HOODOO is English and French, or West Africa and the Americas. That's the first thing. When you encounter English speaking Nigerian, English speaking Ghanaian, English speaking person from Benin or Togo, it's all voodoo. Whether they spell it with a U or O is contingent on whether they speak Spanish, English, Portuguese, French. That's it. Any idea that a U makes it authentic is not correct. Any idea that a U somehow validates the voodoo is a corruption, but also a creation of social media. There was a period, when I look at time periods, 3 years, 5 years, over the course of how long I've been online, and watching the ATR community, African Traditional Religious Community, and their demonstration, those who are initiated actively in this, who came into the internet in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, versus those who continue to come now in the 90s, the 2000s, 2010, 2020, and then their exposure to the tradition. There are clear markers, indicators about people's knowledge, people's awareness, people's training, people's initiation, people's exposure. So there was this argument over the usage of lettering in order to create a lane of popularity for one group or one person or one conversation over the other. It was fake news before we started calling it fake news. It also rode on the premise that somehow Haiti created voodoo, again with the U. And Haiti didn't create voodoo, period. West Africa created voodoo, and many of us, including myself, would say East Africa birthed voodoo because humanity was birthed in East Africa. And when we look at Meroe, Kemet, Nubia, Ethiopia, Somalia, and then the magical arts of the Hebrews, of the Arabs, of the indigenous Africans, and that making its way across the trade route. Frankincense and myrrh making its way across the trade route to West Africa. Gold and silver making its way across the trade route. Other herbs and spices and rituals and beliefs. Alafia, which we say is Yoruba, is really an Arab-rooted word. Ashe, which we say is Yoruba, is really an Arab-rooted word. So voodoo is the oldest organized religion in the world. The oldest organized religion in the world is voodoo. Now, how you spell it is contingent on what language you speak, the origin of the path or lineage or form of voodoo that you practice. And then that's where your U's and your O's and your accent marks and all of that is going to be important. That's when that comes into play. Now, voodoo with a U or without it, with a O or without it, and comparing that to then hoodoo is about the. There's two ways to look at it. First, there's the applied knowledge of voodoo that now is forced to go underground, that now cannot be spoken out loud in the new Americas, and particularly north of the border, where we could be lynched, mutilated, hung, beheaded, for drumming, for gathering, for singing, for doing anything that even looks religious, for doing anything that even appeared to be a form of communication, distance or group communication, or writing. So the voodoo was forced underground. That's the first thing. The only place where the voodoo wasn't entirely forced underground was right here in my front yard, Congo Square, New Orleans, Louisiana, where the slave was not fed on Sundays, but we were allowed to gather in Congo Square and grow peas and beans and a little bit of rice, and fruit, and produce, and then barter. That became our first early African American selling, bartering, trading, business, vending. But also we were allowed to dance, to drum. And I coined the phrase. I coined the phrase. If we could count in Ga, if we can count in Fan, if we can count in Ewe, if we can count in Yoruba, we're now only being forced to count in English, Spanish, Portuguese, German. But if you can remember how to count, then you can remember your rhythms. And if you can remember that, you can remember your calendar structure, the movement of the sun and the moon, the movement of our deities as they show up in the celestial map. So a lot of the idea that we were somehow stripped of our gods, stripped of our names, goes much deeper, because you're now talking about being stripped of math, being stripped of sanity, being stripped of your memory of what you see when you look up at night at the sky. And so we have stories of mutiny. We have stories of the enslaved taking over ships. Some of them more world renowned and world known than others, like Amistad, which has been made into more than one book, more than one movie. But the idea that that was a rare and unusual event is also fostered by the few books and the few movies that sometimes these stories are indeed given. So that's one way of looking at hoodoo. So now it's being masked behind Catholic statuary, behind the 7-day work week in the New World. It's being masked now behind Christian language, religious language. I, like many of you, was raised Christian. I was particularly evangelical Christian, apostolic. So even today, if I wanted to, I could do an entire show on voodoo without speaking without speaking one foreign language, no Ewe, no Yoruba, no West African language. I could do it completely in a biblical Christian language in which many of you would completely be able to interpret without ever using any direct voodoo words at all. So the idea of hiding the culture, masking the culture now behind forced cultural practice and acceptance. Now another story some of you may not be aware of is that, and I believe this happened in Cuba, the Catholic Church and the Vatican had an agreement that we would allow the enslaved to keep their religion, keep their drumming, keep their dancing. This is south of the border now, Cuba, and in the Spanish Catholic world, as long as they embrace Catholicism, as long as they were baptized and accepted Catholicism. And so then a whole nother system of synchronizing began. One, Yoruba synchronizing, and then, of course, ATR synchronizing at every level, all the way probably to the tip of South America. And it shows up as Candable, it shows up as Palo, it shows up as Maria Leonza, it shows up as many other world traditions, not world tradition, world religious traditions in these indigenous communities that have now mixed in with the local and cultural flavor of that particular location. Now, bring it up to modern time, and when I say modern time, the first time there was a candle store, the first time that real churches, the Catholics, started opening bookshops where you could buy your candles or your holy water or your religious supplies, that coincides now with an idea of hoodoo that we see in operation today. That practice of hoodoo is built entirely around commercialism. What can be bought, sold, possessed at the commercial level. And now our Britannicas are moving out of the brick and mortar and are now available online. So people believe Florida water within itself is somehow hoodoo. Lavender water somehow in itself hoodoo. In a bottle, for that matter. I have godchildren. Greetings, Paul, who make their own Florida water. Who don't have to buy no Florida water, who don't have to go into no Botanica, and can make their own Florida water. Just like I have godchildren right now who are making their own sanitizer and their own hand cleanser. So hoodoo with an H then became sort of this commercialized thing that could be talked about in books, printed in books, touted about, promoted online, as sort of this marketing campaign of getting products off the shelves. And even in that dynamic, you don't hear a whole lot of talk about roots and herbs. God bless Felix, may he rest in Orun, and the family and F&F Church Supplies here in New Orleans. Many of you know what I'm talking about here on Broad Street. Store is still to this day completely untouched, but one of the most powerful botanicas in the country, not just here in New Orleans, but in the country. And 3 consecutive owners passed away, died, all within a 30-day time period. Maybe 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And the store is still sitting unsold, unmoved. I'm sure out of fear. I'm sure out of litigation. But the brick and mortar Botanica has had sort of its heyday, if you will. And just as our mom and pop stores sort of had a heyday, and then your big box store and your Walmart came in, and then the internet came about and technology came about, and now that has affected and infected to some degree how people see and view hoodoo, how people see and view ATR for that matter. And it's a whole new ballgame now in terms of how these traditions are able to grow their communities, expand the awareness of their communities, expand the knowledge within their communities, but also at the same time combat the misinformation, the negative information, the fake news about these traditions, and what can be done within these traditions. Magic boxes and magic oils and potions, very much like we saw on religious Christian TV 20 years ago, your prankerchiefs and your prayer oil for sale, for the right donation. We're now seeing that masqueraded in voodoo and in Ifa in a way that's never been done before. because the technology wasn't there, the awareness of these traditions was not there, but it also speaks to the still heightened ignorance, even today, that many who claim Orisha, who claim voodoo, who claim witchcraft, and all the other labels that we use to sort of attach to these traditions, it also still speaks to the high level of ignorance that's still pervasive about what these traditions are, how these traditions operate, and are operated from within. I'm going to give a thanks and praise right now to Cyril Neville and to the greater indigenous community, not just here in New Orleans or Louisiana, but here in the country and indeed globally and worldwide, for their acknowledgement and awareness about truth and getting down to the facts of not just culture and lineage and bloodline, but also in terms of practice, tradition, music, how we operate in these traditions has everything to do with the truth of these traditions surviving and making its way into the next generation. I want to take just a moment to remind you that I am still available on my www.psychicworld.com forward slash, and this is my specific URL, forward slash psychics with an S forward slash the hyphen divine hyphen prince hyphen Ty, Ty, hyphen, and Emeka, Emmecca, my last name. I appreciate you all using the site. I beg of you to comment, rating. It's important for me being able to stay viable on that site. And it is the only site that I use now separate from my own website. It is a by the minute or per minute site. People are trying to arrange appointments with me right now as I speak, which is why I started talking about it and going into detail about it right now. That is one other option people have to communicate with me, to reach out to me, to interact with me on a per minute basis directly right now. I just please ask that you comment, rate about your experience, about your consultation with me. That's really helpful for getting other people to also utilize the site. It's also important for keeping me relevant in that market space. Just go there. Just look at the site. Go to psychicworld.com. www.psychicworld.com. There aren't very many of us on the site. There aren't very many of us signed on to the site. But just looking at it, I need your support. I have way more traffic on the site than what is easily discernible from my ratings and my commenting. So I need us to be just as active and participatory as other communities are in supporting their footprint, in supporting their presence online. And my footprint is your footprint. My footprint is the ATR footprint, is the Voodoo footprint, is the Akan footprint, is the Fan footprint, is the Ifa footprint, is the Haitian Voodoo footprint, is the New Orleans Voodoo footprint. My footprint is your footprint. What? What do you mean? My footprint is your footprint. So we must show support. We must show support. Right now, we have community members, family members who can't work or are limited in their working, limited in their exposure. We need to step up and support each other and support one another. I appreciate you, Kiona, and all of your help and assistance and helping me to channel the questions and comments in the chat. Kayla, thank you so much for being with us here today. I do see your question. Kayla asks, do you believe that the world will ever come back to a place of balance regarding holistic ways of living and proper care of nature and the environment around us? I absolutely do. I do think that it will. I do think that it will come out of duress. Situations such as this. You know, I used to say, I don't know, 10 years ago that I thought it would take global calamity, global catastrophe, alien intervention, something coming in our atmosphere from another world to garner this sort of unity around any one person, place, or thing. Now, let's be clear. I'm not suggesting this has, brought world peace. I'm not suggesting that this has stopped, war globally, much in the way that the Rodney King uprising stopped black on black crime and gang violence in the black neighborhood for at least a week during the Rodney King uprising. But I do believe that it has brought a certain level of unity and focus on one particular person, place, or thing or goal that is unique to humanity right now and will be important to future events, heaven forbid, as we move forward. But the idea that we will achieve a place of balance again, absolutely. We survived the Ice Age. We survived um, asteroid bombardment. The planet has gone through many levels of transition that we still, at a scientific level, can't speak directly to, can't point directly to, because our technology is just not there yet. Um, but we've survived. We've survived. We've survived plagues. We've survived epidemics. We've survived pandemics. So I do believe we will rebalance nature. Water seeks its balance. Nature, too, will seek its balance. The universe will seek its balance. And things will align and realign. The question is, who will be here for that? And how many of your genes will be here for that? How many of your children's grandchildren and so on will be there for that? But that's a great question. That's a powerful question. That's one of the reasons I do this show is for erudite participants such as yourself, Kayla, talk, but also for questions of that sort. It will regain a balance, as Renee Kayla said, right behind you. But we are going to need to pass through the eye of the storm. Absolutely. We are passing through the eye of a needle, as humanity has done several times over. This isn't the first time. This probably won't be the last time. It's just our time. And I heard someone say in media earlier today, I can't remember who it was. What will be said is, what did you do? What position did you take? What action did you foster? What activities did you put in place in your house, in your family, in your workspace, in your community for those who will ultimately survive? Those are the questions. And at a spiritual level, because I'm a spiritualist, that's my job, is to handle spiritual things. This is really the time for us to deal with self. You got time to meditate, you got time to be quiet, we've got time to be still, we've got time to read, we've got time to study, we've got time to ask questions, we've got time to have real, authentic readings and consultations done. We've got time right now to just do these spiritual things. We're not all pressed against the clock right now, except for maybe our emergency workers, Your hospital workers, healthcare workers, grocery stores are not closing. But many of us are making dramatic shifts in our schedule and our timing and what we can do right now and what we can say right now and what we can plan for right now. I just ask that we plan wisely, that we do the best we can with what we have right now and apply it in the best way right now so that we can survive this. We do pass through this. And many of us, if not all of us, can survive this together, and then say, yeah, we did that. We did that thing. But renew where that can be done. Get some housework done. Clean out the attic, clean out the basement. Uh, get some repair work done that can be done safely from within your space. Order your supplies. But use this to do that which is good, that which is useful, which is beneficial. I've suspended my schedule to a great degree right now. I'm not sleeping on an 8 hour, getting up every morning. I'm just not even doing that. I might be napping at 3 in the afternoon. If I'm not booked for an appointment, I might be up doing readings at 3 in the morning now under this new dispensation, this new dynamic, for however long. Your president is predicting at least until July or August. I don't know right now if my alpha, which we celebrate, my alpha, not celebrate, commemorate the middle passage here in New Orleans, the first Saturday of July. I don't know if that's going to happen this year. From what I know, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Essence Fest um, might not be happening this year. So I am privy to some information. I can't always divulge all my sources. I have to protect my sources. But I don't believe Essence Fest will be taking place. So we're looking at being still for a while. Um, Now, if you can, and you live in rural areas, suburban areas, far out places, I know you're grateful to live in far out places today, but city parks might be congested in big cities, but city parks might be completely isolated in faraway places. State parks might be completely isolated in many of our states. Your state parks might be completely isolated. Our wilderness areas, our woods, your beaches, places that you can maybe take your family, um, you know, bleach down your car and your environment and take your family, and not necessarily come in contact with other families or other people directly, and get out in nature. In that way, my gardeners and my planters and my harvesters, we already have a certain knowledge of plants, where they are, particularly right now, and where they are, and they're not being uh, invaded by other humans. There are certain places I can walk to right now and not make contact with other people and pull up certain things and harvest certain things. So I want to encourage us to take this as a time to think positively and recreate new ways of looking at this as a challenge. This doesn't have to be a negative challenge. This could be a fun challenge. This could be an exploratory challenge that gets us to do new things and find new ways of creating and new plants and new trails that you might not have ever gone down before, had it not been for an event such as this. Um, Thank you so much, Takia Jet. I appreciate you. I honor you. I honor anybody right now who makes sure we have toilet paper. I honor anybody right now who makes sure that we have water at the house of the Divine Prince. And I have some people who, man, just bring tears to my eyes, are just supportive, consistent, always have our back here, just as we are always looking out for yours. So I feel like I'm just talking right now. My chat, I'm not seeing any large capitalized questions right now. Thank you so much, Kiona, for typing in those links for me. Though I'm probably being lazy and I could be doing it too, but I appreciate the fact that you're doing it for me and that you're helping me to sort of move that along. I'm grateful for all the viewers and listeners and participants in the show right now. I truly am. You could be watching CNN right now. You could be watching ABC and NBC and in ad nauseum, as they say right now. So I'm grateful for your taking out the time to be here with me. Please click that thumbs up for me. Click the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to my channel and subscribe to some of the people and some of the other channels for whom I subscribe to. When I'm not here, listen to the sound of my own voice. I'm on other people's channel, and I'm using YouTube right now a lot. People who live broadcast, I'm doing that. Those network stations that do live broadcasts, I'm also doing that. ABC, NBC, Fox, they're all on YouTube to some degree. Some of your regularly scheduled programming is throwing up old stuff, but they're putting it on their YouTube channels and in their social media. A lot of these businesses are reaching for social media now, something that you and I have long been active in, but they're reaching for social media now because they can't leave the building, or they're in these huge metropolises, these huge cities, and now have to access things virtually or learn new pathways around their community without having to leave their house. Something we in this sacred space are well versed in, navigating the world. And so if I can't send for it, if it can't be mailed to me, if it can't be dropped off at the door, the likelihood that I'm going to walk to it, cab to it, Uber to it, ask any of my friends or family to drive to it, it's going to be very limited unless it's an emergency, unless it's extremely important. This is now the time that people are wanting to order herbs and Epsom salt and wintergreen rubbing alcohol and all that good hoodoo stuff that many of us use all year round. Lamp oil. How many of you just wish you had some lamp oil right about now? So I'm not making fun of people's lack of preparation or being caught off guard. I am making fun of the idea that voodoo and hoodoo and whatnot. We've been the outball. We've been the oddball, the outball. The person who's looked at as being a little strange, a little bit odd. Some of you've been stock holding and storehousing stuff for years. I got people in my family that's been holding on to stuff for years. Paper products, food products. Some of them live in some of the most faraway reaches and some of the most faraway rural areas you can imagine. It ain't even a real road to get into some of my family's locations. And so they've had to supply their own stuff in the last 30 years. So they're not entirely as caught off guard as you or me or some of us who live in the city. They feel a little bit more together. And until we start having problems with gas, we're good. We're good. As long as the 18 wheelers can bring it in, like your president said, and Walmart and Giant and, Kroger and these food stores can maintain normal food, because all we need right now is normal food. All the extra is just that, extra. And you want to have extra, but if that's new for you, then you're now realizing that once you start getting into extra, now you need extra space. Now you need storage. Now you need security. Now you need visibility. There are a whole lot of things that come in. And so I beg you, take this time, support, may she rest in her room, support Octavia Butler, buy her book, support her book, Parable of a Sower, share her book, read the book that I posted on my Instagram and talked about in previous show, The Eyes of Darkness. This is the time to get creative and be creative and explore the creative. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Listen, I'm going to stop. I'm going to conserve my energy and get some fluids and some water and juice a few vegetables. And I look forward to being with you here in this sacred space again momentarily. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Ashe, Ashe, or Ashe. I'm here for you. Email me. Greetings and salutations, one and all.